Guys, I have a feeling that Immortals Fenyx Rising is going to be one of the biggest hidden gems of 2020. It's one of those really rare scenarios where you've got a AAA game that I think will review really well, and people who actually pick up and play the game will really like it, and yet there's so much background noise surrounding this game that I kind of worry how it will perform. But if it's a good enough game, like on its own merits, then it shouldn't matter, right? People will make the time to play it, and Ubisoft, of course, has the means to get this game out there and promote it long term. The day you guys are watching this video, Immortals reviews are dropping. This is the embargo, but I didn't feel comfortable doing a full-scale review. I haven't had the time to play the entire game or play enough of it to like give you one of those videos. So this isn't a review, it's more of a general thoughts video since I've played the game several times before launch, and I feel like I've played enough in the last week to at least give you my general, impressions. Before we start, big thanks to Ubisoft for sending me a review code. So Immortals is facing several challenges that I do think we have to address off the top, and they kind of unfortunately shape how we feel about this game in general. First off, the timing just is not great for this release date. I mean, this is after Black Friday, which usually does not bode well for sales, which is not great. And then this is right before Cyberpunk 2077. Now, it's not to say that you can't play both of those games, but a lot of people are treating it that way. And I think that they do occupy similar spaces as longer AAA games, and they're open world. I don't believe that Immortals is an RPG, but still, you kind of get that open world bloat, especially after Watch Dogs and especially after Valhalla. If you're any sort of Ubisoft fan, man, it's just like another one of these kinds of games. It does overwhelm you. There is a general perception issue surrounding Immortals and what kind of game it is. I think most people look at Immortals and just general impressions, they think this is an RPG. But it's not. It's actually less of an RPG than Breath of the Wild felt like. I mean, there was looting in that game, some light elements, but this is less so than that game was. People also look at this and first glance they think, oh, this is just AC Odyssey again. It's not. It actually plays nothing like Assassin's Creed. They also look at it and say, oh, Ubisoft's Breath of the Wild. That was a very popular post on my preview videos. It's a copy-paste. But again, it's just not. Across the board, people seem to not have a great grasp over what kind of game that is. And I think that's a misunderstanding coming from many different directions. You've got it from the community, but also from Ubi, I think, as well. They didn't hammer home enough the message, the idea that this game is unique enough, even though it features, heavy Greek mythology like Odyssey did. This is a wholly new and different IP and experience. If there was any game where Ubi could shake off the perception that every single one of their games is samey and sort of has a little much too collectathon-y stuff, and also it's open world, this would have been the game to do it with. And for one reason or another, that didn't happen. But like I said at the top, if the game is good enough, and I think it has a shot to be good enough, then it can absolutely avoid all of that backlash just surrounding the perception. So finally, let's talk about what I think about the game. Immortals is a game with the most clear identity of any Ubisoft game that I've played in a long time. What I mean by this is these games have blended genres for a long time and they appeal to wide audiences. I'm looking at Assassin's Creed for its transition towards more RPG elements. Same goes for Watch Dogs. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's an objective fact. These games appeal to a lot of different crowds and audiences, whereas Immortals is more focused. It really goes after its vision, and it does it really well. So what is that vision? To me, Immortals is an open world game, obviously, from the top, but it's an action adventure game. It's not an RPG. It also features hack and slash combat. You're not bogged down by looting, by strategizing, by synergizing. That stuff, there's some options there, but it's very light. The focus is on the action, on what you're doing moment to moment. And it's a game that you can absolutely pick up and play and have a really good time with within seconds. There's no slow burn. There's a few things that kind of hamper the experience that we'll get into, but for the most part, it's a game that you can pick up and play and have a blast with. A lot of the vision of this game is wrapped in its world design, and of course, I think Ubisoft Quebec took inspiration from Breath of the Wild with the way they designed this world. It's vast, it's wide open, there's no barriers. You can go absolutely everywhere that you see, and it's dotted with landmarks. Landmarks is something that I feel like I've been repeating in my head over and over when talking about this game, but it is so important. There are so many things that draw and catch your eye and pique your interest. And once it's got your interest, it has its hooks in you because you want to go to that location and figure out what that thing is. Another huge part of this identity is the puzzling. Guys, there is so much puzzling in Immortals Fenyx Rising. I didn't even realize it in the previews. I did say this is kind of a split 30-30 or 33% between exploration, puzzling, and combat. The puzzling part of that is massive. It's incorporated in the main story. It's not just side activities. A core foundational thing you're doing in this game is solving puzzles. And then it's also defined by the combat, the hack and slash. And it feels arcadey, it feels light and fun, but it feels precise and responsive. And I'll go more in depth on why exactly it feels that way later in the video, but just know that's a very important part of this formula. There's a solid chance that from what I just explained, some of you, if you haven't been following this game closely, you may be surprised with my description of this game. It's not an RPG. It's not a clone. It's not what you've probably been seeing from the general gaming community. It's not these things. It's hard to communicate this stuff through a video. I know it's annoying to hear. You have to play it, but I hope that going deeper into these little segments will give you guys an even clearer idea of what Immortals is. But for now, I want to take a detour and talk about the story. This is something that I've covered in my previews, and I've talked about how I appreciate the tone, how this is a lighter, more playful game that breaks the fourth wall and isn't too serious, and it's full of humor, and I appreciate that. I still do like the general vibe of this game, but I've found from playing from the very start and playing longer into the story that the cutscenes are just a bit too long for me. I love Prometheus and Zeus playing off each other. They're kind of like color commentators, you know, watching a football game, but it's you playing Immortals. You know, they're narrating in the background. That stuff is great, and it makes me laugh frequently. But most of the time, I'm waiting for characters in cutscenes to finish what they're saying so I can just get back into the world. That's not to say that the story isn't interesting or it's not well written or well presented. I think it's just a little too long, and every single time I hit a major story beat and I have to watch like a 5-minute cutscene, it grinds my experience to a halt. I care about Fenyx, but not to the point where I want to watch these cutscenes as much as they're being presented to me. That being said, those of you who do get invested in the story, I think you will really like what's there. It's not like they glossed over it. They did give the time and attention and care that it probably deserves. Perhaps the most impressive single part of Immortals to me is the combat. It feels like this was a primary focus. When you get the controller or the mouse and keyboard in your hands, you'll know what I mean. It's fun and flashy, but also it's so mechanically sound to the point that it shocked me. I couldn't quite see this in my previews because of input lag, and I was playing remotely, so I didn't have the game like right in front of me. It feels very precise, like very low input lag, great animation. The combination of these two elements makes it feel responsive. It's just not something you expect from this genre. I mean, it is so clean and responsive that it reminds me of, you know, a NetherRealm game like Injustice or Mortal Kombat. That's how responsive and precise it feels. I know these declarative statements can get out of control, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, for me, this combat feels better than Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It just flows better. And I think you could make the case that it's more simple. I think it is in some ways, but the overall result is smoother. Where I feel like sometimes the jankiness or the weird wonky physics of Valhalla can sort of throw me off of my rhythm, I don't get that feeling in Immortals. Everything flows. And don't let the art style either fool you into thinking that this is a kid's game that doesn't have competent combat. It absolutely does. And you feel that more and more as you progress and unlock skills and abilities, and these things become better, and it just reaches a level of depth that I think will surprise and shock people. Speaking of art style, this is one of the prettiest games of this year. I know we've got Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I know we've got Hades. I know we have the realism of The Last of Us Part 2. I know we have Ghost of Tsushima. You know, that is a very pretty game. This game is bursting with personality and flavor and color, from the environment to the character models, the animations. Every single location in the world has a handcrafted feel that never gets old to run around in. I'm always stumbling upon something that just blows my mind. The verticality of it all. Again, we come back to Breath of the Wild because it was so influential, I think, for this kind of style of game. I mean, Immortals does what Breath of the Wild does, and it might look better in my eyes. I mean, it certainly runs better. It's not on a Switch, which is great, but man, they just took that concept, that inspiration, and ran with it. You see this with the verticality. There's so many opportunities to soak in the entire island from these tall vistas. Like, you are hundreds, thousands of meters in the air looking down on this vast, vast open world. You can go absolutely everywhere that you see. One of my favorite things in this game is to leap off of the vantage points and just glide and take the world in. Navigation is another area that I think is done really well. Another area where inspiration was clearly taken from Breath of the Wild, and it paid off. However, there's one area of inspiration that I don't think works, and that is climbing. This is one of those things where you either like it or you don't, and I understand that. I don't like this style of like stamina-based climbing. It feels really slow and cumbersome when Fenyx like has these wings to glide and dash around and sprint. Like, I should be able to climb faster than this. Even with a skill upgrade that allows you to kind of jump and go more quickly, it's just laborious. Like, I try my best to avoid climbing when I can, and that signals to me that it's not a game mechanic that I like. Whoever designed the puzzles in Immortals deserves some sort of award, some kind of medal. It's hard for me to think of a game besides Breath of the Wild, I think, that offers up this many unique puzzles that makes it feel fresh and engaging from the starting hours to, you know, very far in. I mean, the variety's insane and the mechanics are so well thought of and crafted. I mean, this stuff I don't think is necessarily original, but what they do with the ideas does feel original. They're physics-based puzzles, you know, navigating a ball towards a hole, placing boxes on pressure plates. You've got little wind vents and tunnels. You have different materials of objects that you're having to deal with. There's timing, memorization, puzzle platforming. It's all here, and it's surprising that they can do so many different things with the puzzle platforming and make it work. Cohesive. It's very cohesive, and it's also fun. When you marry responsive movement with great animation, with sound puzzle design, that's a recipe that literally never gets old for me. And that's what you get with Immortals. I also love how there's some smaller puzzles that are fairly simple, quick and easy. It feels nice to complete those. But there's the larger, grander ones. Like, some of these puzzles take more than 15 minutes to come together because they span across a very wide area. And there's also a lot of accessibility options. Like, if you get stumped, you can turn on things that show you exactly where you need to go in order to complete an objective. I know this was kind of a mishmash of, you know, topics in one video, but I hope this gave you a good idea of what I think about the game. I think it's a really, really great game. A surprise, to be sure. I don't think a lot of people expected this from Immortals, but to me, this is a hidden gem. Not because it's an indie. That's usually a term or a qualifier that we connect with games that don't have a lot of spotlight. This game does have spotlight, but it's a hidden gem because of the perception surrounding the game, which is not positive, generally speaking, at least from my sphere of influence. I just feel like if people put this in their backlog or wait for a sale, it'll be one of those experiences where they think and say, I can't believe I didn't play this earlier, because it's just so fun. And before we wrap, I just wanted to say kudos to Ubisoft Quebec for this game. I have a little bit of an underdog complex, just generally speaking, and I didn't really like the backlash that this studio got after AC Odyssey. So To me, it feels like the studio really hit their stride after AC Odyssey and the fallout with, the purists of the AC community. And I just want to say congrats, like, you made an awesome game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to my channel and hit the bell to turn on live notifications so you don't miss my next one. Also be sure to follow me on Twitter, I'm at jayvee on YT, and Instagram at jayvee.yt to stay up to date with all of my content. And if you want to talk more video games, Assassin's Creed, Cyberpunk, whatever, join our community Discord server. We're discord.gg/jayvee on YT. Lots of great conversation going on around this busy video game season. So links for everything are in the description below. Big thanks to my YouTube members, my Ultra fans, Grass, Dave, Deadwalker, Bill, Cam, Cullen, Jacob. Super fans, Kamal, Casey, Tipsy Sergey, Dan, Karen, and Tarl K. Fans, Matthew, Spyro, JVO, John, Lilman, Brock, Tia, Level 42, Ryan, Allura, Ryan, Moonman, and Joe. And supporters, Nos, Flame, Nightmare, Sung, Abhishek, V-Toxic, Terran, Glenn, Elo Games, Undersittable, Adam, Blaze, Mr. Hollow, Quickness, and Furcan for supporting the channel. If you want to support me further, click the join button below this video. In exchange for your support, you'll unlock custom badges and emotes to use in chat. Check the link in the description for more information. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.